Maldives, the drowning nation. The Maldives hits you with a terrifying fact. Its highest natural point is barely taller than a two-story house. This island chain, scattered across the Indian Ocean, sits only about 1.5 meters above sea level. Decades of reef mining, tourism expansion, and warming oceans have weakened the natural barriers that once protected it. Back in 1987, a massive storm flooded the capital Malé so badly that leaders first warned the world the country might vanish. Since then, tides have grown higher, storms stronger, and saltwater keeps creeping into freshwater supplies. The government is even buying land abroad as a backup. By 2050, parts of the Maldives could be unlivable. The ocean moves on. Next stop, Kiribati. Kiribati, a country running out of land. Kiribati starts with a brutal truth. Many of its islands are slimmer than airport runways. Stretching across the central Pacific, its atolls rise only 1 to 3 meters above the sea. Since the 1990s, king tides have swallowed whole patches of shoreline, pushing families inland until there's nowhere left to go. The country's history is shaped by isolation, fishing traditions, and battles over water access. But as temperatures rise, coral reefs bleach and can't protect the coasts. In 2014, the government bought land in Fiji as a long-term escape plan. Villages have already relocated, and crops fail as saltwater leaks into soil. By 2050, some islands may disappear entirely. And as Kiribati battles the sea, Somalia fights something else, its own instability. Somalia, a state struggling to hold together. Somalia grabs attention with its decades-long struggle to function as a unified country. Sitting on the Horn of Africa, it once thrived on trade routes linking the Middle East and Africa. But the collapse of its government in 1991 split the nation into competing regions and armed groups. Drought cycles grew harsher, pushing nomadic communities into conflict over shrinking water sources. In 2011 and 2017, famine-level emergencies hit millions, showing how fragile the state had become. Piracy off the Somali coast added international pressure, and rebuilding efforts constantly collided with political fractures. If these trends continue, sections of the country could drift into permanent separation by 2050. And the next story takes us even deeper into collapse. Yemen. Yemen, a country breaking under endless pressure. Yemen opens with a grim picture. The world's worst humanitarian crisis unfolding in slow motion. Located at the tip of the Arabian Peninsula, it has always struggled with water scarcity. Its capital, Sana'a, might be the first major city to run out of groundwater. Civil conflict, which escalated in 2015, shattered infrastructure and sent cholera outbreaks racing through crowded neighborhoods. Ports were blocked, food became scarce, and entire regions were cut off from health services. Historically, Yemen balanced tribal politics, trade, and geography, but war pushed everything past the breaking point. Even if fighting stops, rebuilding will take decades. By 2050, parts of Yemen may be too damaged or too dry to fully recover. The same story echoes in South Sudan. South Sudan, fragile borders, fragile future. South Sudan begins with its harsh reality. It's one of the youngest countries on Earth and already one of the most unstable. After winning independence in 2011, hopes of peace were quickly crushed by internal conflict 2 years later. The Nile Basin should have been an economic backbone, but disputes over borders, oil fields, and ethnic divisions fractured the nation. In 2013 and 2016, violence displaced millions, creating one of Africa's largest refugee crises. Floods have worsened over the past decade, wiping out crops and pushing communities into makeshift camps. With weak infrastructure and little political trust, parts of the country could face near collapse by 2050. And Haiti shows what happens when disasters never stop coming. Haiti, disaster. After disaster, Haiti hits with a pattern that's almost cruel. Every time the country stands up, something knocks it down. Sitting on 2 major fault lines, it was devastated by the 2010 earthquake that killed over 200,000 people. Government buildings, hospitals, and entire neighborhoods crumbled in seconds. Recovery was slow, and in 2016, Hurricane Matthew tore apart southern Haiti, wiping out crops and homes. Political instability, rooted in a long history of foreign intervention, corruption, and economic pressure, kept the state from rebuilding properly. In recent years, gang violence has seized whole districts of Port-au-Prince. Without stronger institutions, Haiti could face deeper collapse by 2050, and the next country hides its own crisis behind tight borders, North Korea. North Korea collapse. Behind closed doors, North Korea starts with a mystery, a state built to seal itself off from the world. Its economy has struggled for decades, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, cut off key support. Droughts in the mid-1990s triggered a famine that killed hundreds of thousands. Today, sanctions limit trade, energy shortages are constant, and the country's aging infrastructure strains under pressure. Border closures during the 2020 pandemic reportedly disrupted food supplies even more. While the government maintains strict control, economic isolation and internal stress create long-term instability. By 2050, North Korea could face a major internal shift or fragmentation. Syria shows what happens when a nation crosses that line. Syria, a nation frozen in rubble. Syria opens with its decade of destruction. Once known for its ancient cities and diverse cultures, the country fell into civil war in 2011 after protests were met with harsh crackdowns. Multiple factions, foreign powers, and extremist groups turned the conflict into a brutal battlefield. Cities like Aleppo and Homs were shattered, entire districts reduced to concrete skeletons. The war displaced over half the population, scattering millions across neighboring countries and Europe. Even where fighting slowed, infrastructure, schools, and hospitals remain heavily damaged. By 2050, large regions may still struggle to rebuild or repopulate. Meanwhile, a tiny Pacific nation faces a different kind of erasure: Tuvalu. Tuvalu, a country erasing itself. Tuvalu begins with its haunting future, a nation that might disappear without a single explosion or invasion. This chain of low-lying atolls sits halfway between Hawaii and Australia. Like Kiribati, most of its land rises less than 3 meters above sea level. Even small storms can send seawater rushing across the islands, flooding homes and government offices. In the 1990s and 2000s, measurements showed sea levels rising faster than expected in the region. The government has already recorded villages losing coastline and cemeteries being washed away. If ocean levels climb above global averages, Tuvalu could become uninhabitable by 2050. Bangladesh, however, faces a much bigger version of the same threat. Bangladesh, floodwaters rising faster than its defenses. Bangladesh hits with its scale. 170 million people packed into one of the world's most flood-prone regions. The country sits on the delta of 3 massive rivers, the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna. Monsoon floods have always shaped life here, but rising sea levels push saltwater deeper inland, threatening farmland. The 1998 and 2007 floods displaced millions, showing how quickly the rivers can swallow entire districts. Rapid urban growth in Dhaka adds pressure as drainage systems struggle under intense rainfall. Bangladesh has built cyclone shelters, dams, and warning systems, but by 2050, some coastal zones could be permanently underwater. And Lebanon shows what happens when economic collapse hits just as hard. Lebanon, when crisis becomes normal. Lebanon opens with a shocking event: the 2020 Beirut port explosion, one of the largest non-nuclear blasts ever recorded. It exposed how fragile the country had become after years of political gridlock, debt, and outdated infrastructure. The Lebanese pound collapsed soon after, wiping out savings and pushing food prices past what many families could afford. Power outages lasted hours or entire days, a consequence of decades of underfunded utilities and corruption. Historically, Lebanon balanced diverse religious communities through political compromise, but that system has strained under economic pressure. Without major reforms, parts of the state could fail by 2050. And our final stop shows how a nation can exhaust itself from the inside out: Nauru. Nauru, when an economy runs out of ground. Nauru begins with a strange twist. It was once one of the richest countries per person, thanks to phosphate mining. But the mining removed so much rock that 80% of the island's interior became jagged, unusable terrain. As deposits ran out in the 1990s, the economy collapsed. Attempts to build new industries struggled, leaving Nauru dependent on foreign aid and hosting offshore detention centers. Freshwater is limited, obesity and diabetes rates are high, and most of the coastline is vulnerable to rising seas. By 2050, Nauru may face the reality of having little land left to support its population. These stories show how fragile a nation can be when the ground beneath it gives way.